If you have a dream, chase for it. Simulan mo nang abutin. Make it happen. Back and raise your family in Australia with AMBPS. Make your future bright with AMBPS. On migration, education, pangarap ay maabot na. AMBPS, ang kasama mo.
Visit our website, amvpsolutions.info, and Facebook page, Aussie Migration and Visa Professional Solutions.
A dream. Everyone has it. Distractions are everywhere, which makes us feel far from our dreams. Now, there is a way to close that gap. With AMBPS, you can take the one less travel by, and that has made all the difference. Whether big or small, our dreams are there to take us to write our future. Be a scholar now. To learn more, visit our website at amvpsolutions.info. Like us on Facebook at Aussie Migration and Visa Professional Solutions.
Hello everyone, good day. My name is Edmund and I am the Registered Migration Agent of Aussie Migration and Visa Professional Solutions. Today's information session, we'll be talking about the Job Ready program of the Trades Recognition Australia. Now, this program is intended for students who recently finished an Australian qualification. Now, not all qualification or courses can apply for a Job Ready program or skills assessment with Trades Recognition Australia. Take note that there are only several occupations that can undergo Job Ready program. Now, the purpose of the Job Ready program is to develop the skills and improve the learnings of these students who recently graduated with a vocational course. Popular courses that requires Job Ready program are chef, painting and decorating, cook, and carpentry. So those occupations that are in the medium to long-term strategic list may undergo Job Ready program, and this is for purposes of complying their skills assessment requirement for skilled visas. Now, take note that the Job Ready program is composed of several stages. Before you can apply for your 485 visa or the temporary graduate visa under the graduate stream, there is a requirement that you must submit stage 1 of the Job Ready program. And then once your 485 visa is granted, then you can apply for stage 2 or the job, you call this JRE stage. So again, before you apply for the 485, you must comply with the requirements for the stage 1 of the JRP or the so-called PSA. And then once the 485 visa is granted, then you can apply for stage 2. So meaning, before the grant of your 485 visa, there has to be a decision of your stage 1 PSA application. Because if it is still not yet decided, then you cannot apply for stage 2. Now let's discuss more of this as I continue with my slides. So there you go, Job Ready program. This is for recent international student graduates with a course that is a vocational course, and the occupation aligned to that course is in the medium to long-term list. Now, Trades Recognition Australia is the skills assessing authority that will assess if the applicant has successfully passed the skills assessment stages. Now, Trades Recognition Australia is a skills assessing authority with the Australian Government Department of Education, Skills and Employment, commonly known as the Department. The Trades Recognition Australia skills assessments are intended to ensure that a successful applicant is able to perform at the required skill level for their nominated occupation. Now, as I mentioned, the skills assessment is important for the skilled visas 189, 190, and 491. Now, what are the aims of the Job Ready program? The JRP aims to ensure that a skilled worker is well placed to seek employment in their nominated occupation in Australia. And there are 4 steps. As I mentioned, this is not just a one-step program. So, first step is the provisional skills assessment, stage 1. Second step is the job ready employment, stage 2. Third is the job ready workplace assessment. And finally, the job ready final assessment. Now, as to fees, before the effectivity of the new policy, the provisional skills assessment fee is 300. Now, it was lessened into 200. This take effect October 2021. Now, for the stage 2, the skills assessment fee is 450. Stage 3, the skills assessment fee is 2,540. And for step 4 or stage 4, the skills assessment fee is 65. Now, you don't need to pay this amount of money one time. So if you pass stage 1, then that's the time you need to apply for and pay job ready employment fee of 450 and then so on. Now, here is a summary of the stages before you can have a positive skills assessment. Now, as I mentioned, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Now, requirements for provisional skills assessment: finished a course, an Australian qualification, and you have worked for at least 360 hours of paid employment or vocational placement. And once the stage 2 is, once the step 1 is finished and you have already received the result of your 485 visa and also the positive skills assessment outcome for step 1, then you can now apply for stage 2, which is the job ready employment. So, requirements: PSA positive successful outcome, an appropriate visa with at least 12 months eligibility with no work limitation. So basically, that's the 485 visa. And once you have finished at least 863 hours, then that's the time you can apply for step 3, which is the job ready workplace assessment. Now, take note that for step 2, there are several forms that you need to submit, and that is the employment verification report and the skills progress report, which we will discuss later on as we go along with this information session. Now, once you have finished at least 1,725 hours of paid employment while you are on job ready workplace assessment or stage 3, then you can apply for the last stage, which is the job ready final assessment. Requirements: completed EVRs or employment verification reports, 1,725 hours of paid employment, and a successful job ready workplace assessment. Now, let's have a summary of what's going to happen during stage 1. In this information session, I tend not to focus a lot with stage 1 because this is already a common knowledge for almost all international students, for the reason that they can't apply for the 485 without knowing this. So again, in summary, stage 1 requirement is you have finished an Australian qualification. For chef, you need to finish certificate 4. That would be enough for the skills assessment, but you need to have at least 2 years to study for the 485 visa. So you need to submit for the 485 visa application your completion letters and statement of results and award certificates for certificate 3, certificate 4, and diploma of hospitality. Now, as I mentioned a while ago, evidence of a minimum of 360 hours of employment or vocational placement. So if you are taking commercial cookery, then you must have, or you must submit payslip evidencing 360 hours of paid employment. Or if it's not enough and you have undertaken work placement, then you can also submit your log sheet or a completion letter from the school stating that you have undertaken placement for several number of hours. Now, stage 2, or the job-ready employment. To be eligible, first, again, you must receive a successful PSA outcome. Second, have less than 4 months remaining on your student visa, or ideally, this happens after the grant of the 485. Third, hold or have lodged an application with Home Affairs for a visa that has full work rights. And lastly, have secured an eligible employment. Now, in the information sheet provided by TRA, it says here that you can undergo stage 2 provided that you have a visa that has full work rights that is lodged. But what happens in reality is that the stage 2 happens after the grant of the 485, because the PSA outcome is released only a short period of time before the grant of the 485. So that's why the period stated here must have at less than 4 months is not practiced. And then another requirement is that have secured an eligible employment. Now, what are the application documents for this stage? First, employment verification report signed and dated by your employer and nominated supervisor. Second, a copy of your current visa grant notification, which is the 485 visa. If you have a pending visa notices, then they should also be provided. Third, pay evidence that covers your prior employment claim, if applicable. We will discuss more of this later. And the pay evidence must be provided as a single PDF document with payslips in date order and a copy of your passport identification page if you have been issued a new passport since you have applied for your PSA. Now, another document that is needed, and it's not mentioned here, is the skills progress report. Now, the skills progress report is a form that must be filled by the applicant, while the employment verification report, this is the form that must be filled by the supervisor. Now, if you try to notice the requirements here, it states that pay evidence that covers your prior employment claim. So the explanation here is that prior to your lodgement of stage 2, you have accumulated at least 3 months of work experience in one employer. Then you can use that 3 months period for purposes of computing the required number of hours for the remaining stages of the Job Ready program. Now, question, is it possible if I change an employer or I add additional employer while I am doing my stage 2? Now the answer is yes. If you have more than one employer or change employers during the program, you must submit the employment details. So in this instance, you just need to inform TRA through the through the online portal that you have a new employer. And take note that there's a restriction. You cannot exceed 5 employers and a minimum of at least 863 paid work hours in one employer. Now, claiming prior employment. This is what I told you a while ago. You can claim up to 3 consecutive months of paid employment that was undertaken immediately prior to applying online for Stage 2 or the JRE. This can only be claimed at the time of submitting your JRE application online. So you need to compile all the payslips evidencing that you have worked for at least 3 consecutive months prior to the lodgement of your Stage 2. Prior employment can be considered if or where it was, number 1, undertaken with the first eligible employer you registered for JRE. So take note again that the employer that you have registered in your skills assessment application with TRA, that is the employer where you have undertaken the previous work experience for at least 3 months. And then the work must be in the nominated occupation and must have undertaken in the 3 months immediately prior to the online application. It must be current and ongoing on the date you submitted your online JRE application and not already used to meet the work requirements for your Stage 1 or the so-called PSA application. Now, let's proceed with the employment requirements. The total number of hours needed for you to be able to complete the Job Ready program is at least 1,725 hours of paid employment over a minimum of 12 calendar months from your JRE start date. So meaning, we all know that the 485 visa is for 1 year and 6 months or 18 months in total. You may complete the 1,725 hours within a year. So the minimum months is 12 calendar months from the start of the JRE application or approval. Periods of leave, including paid leave, cannot be included in the 1,725 hours. If you complete 1,725 hours in less than 12 calendar months, you will still be required to complete 12 months from your JRE start date to be eligible to apply for your Job Ready final assessment. So this is the consequence if you finish 1,725 hours less than a year or less than 12 months. You will still be required to complete 12 months. So that means that the 1,725 hours is just a minimum because you can still be required to complete 12 months of work experience. Now, eligible employment. For the employment to be eligible, it must be with your current employer when you register the employer online, not have been used to meet the work component of the PSA, the Stage 1. This means that the pay slips that you have submitted as proof that you have been employed and have been working for at least 360 hours is not submitted for purposes of the 1,725 hours. So you cannot use that again. And then employment must involve a work at an appropriate skill level and include a range of tasks and duties relevant to your nominated occupation. And this work must be paid in accordance with applicable industrial awards or agreements and Australian workplace relations laws. The relationship with your employer must be in a formal employer-employee arrangement where work is assigned by the employer or supervisor, and the work must be for a couple or a number of hours per day or shift, and it must be paid with evidence of pay slips, and the employer must or should pay superannuation contributions, and must accrue annual leave and or other leave entitlements such as leave loading under casual employment agreement. And this employer-employee relationship must be registered and approved by Trades Recognition Australia through validation of the Employment Verification Report. Now, EVR, so that means Employment Verification. What is its purpose? The EVR seeks information that will assist Trades Recognition Australia to determine whether your employment arrangements provide sufficient opportunity for you to do a range of tasks and duties to demonstrate your skills using industry-accepted practices and tools, equipments relevant to your nominated occupation. And the employer and nominated supervisor listed in your application must complete and sign the EVR. So EVR is a very important document for TRA because it will assist them in determining what type of employment arrangements you have with your employer. Now, what are types of employment that is not suitable? Number one, it does not include tasks and duties at the skill level appropriate to your nominated occupation. Number two, it is unlikely to provide you with access to an appropriate range of tasks and duties for your nominated occupation. Number three, it doesn't provide you with access to industry-accepted tools and equipment relevant to your nominated occupation. And lastly, you are not being paid. So if any of these four enumeration is included in your employer-employee arrangement, then that employment is not suitable for the skills assessment or the job ready program. Now, let's talk about skills progress report. This is another form that the PRA is using to assess whether the student applicant or the skills assessment applicant is ready for real work. Now, the purpose of the skills progress report is to confirm that the applicant is developing its skills and experience in the workplace using the appropriate tools and equipment and doing the duties expected for the occupation in an Australian workplace. The applicant must provide SPR under any of the following circumstances if the applicant has not yet achieved a successful job-ready workplace assessment. First, the applicant must have worked with an employer for more than 6 months since the JRE start date. The applicant are ending the employment with an employer that has been previously registered, or the TRA requests for the skills progress report. So these are the mandatory period where the student applicant must submit SPR. After working for at least 6 months from the start date of the JRE, or if the student wants to change employer, then he must submit an SPR prior to the changing of the new employer, even if this is less than 6 months, or whenever the Trades Recognition Australia Skills Assessing Authority requests for one. Now, let's proceed with step 3. Now, step 3, as you can see before, the amount of fees here is a bit high. And let's see what's its purpose. Now, the purpose of the JRWA, or the Job Ready Workplace Assessment, is to determine whether the applicant or the newly graduate student is operating in the workplace at the required skill level for the occupation nominated in the application. So, as I mentioned, the chef occupation is very popular for TRA skills assessment under the Job Ready program. An assessor from the TRA approved RTO, it should either be William Anglis or Victoria University, will conduct JRWA and will focus on the activities that the applicant has been required to perform during the employment as recorded in the Skills Progress report. And then the Trades Recognition Australia will email the student applicant when the records indicate that he or she is eligible for the Job Ready Workplace assessment. Now, what are the eligibility requirements for this stage? To be eligible, the following are required. Number 1, the employment arrangement must have been approved. Number 2, acceptable pay evidence for at least 863 hours over a minimum of 6 months from your JRE start date. So take note of this. 863 hours over a minimum of 6 months period. So if there's a conflict between this number and this number, 6 months it will prevail. So even if you have already finished 860 hours in 4 months or 5 months maybe, you need to wait to achieve 6 months period from the start of your JRE start date. Then acceptable SPRs, EVRs, and any other relevant information confirming you're performing expected tasks and duties and developing the skills required for the nominated occupation. Now, change to employment arrangements. As I mentioned, this is allowed. The only rule is that if you have a new employer, you must submit the employment details through the online portal before you apply for JRWA. So it must be done prior to the application of stage 3. An EVR must also be completed and uploaded in the TRA online portal for any additional employers' details submitted through the online portal. Before your JRWA arrangements can proceed, new work arrangement must be approved by TRA. In addition, you must provide pay evidence for at least 1 month of work after the date you submitted your subsequent employer online. So take note that JRWA, before application, you must, and if you want to change an employer, you must comply with the following requirements. You must update your online portal. Second, it must be approved by TRA. And third, you must provide for at least 1 month of work after the date you submitted your subsequent employer online. Now, assignment of TRA-approved assessor. The TRA-approved RTO will allocate an assessor to conduct your workplace assessment. This happens during the third stage. The assessor will contact you and your employer supervisor to organize a time and date that is suitable for the conduct of the assessment. Number 2, discuss with you the work you have done and the tools and equipments that you would be available for the assessment. Number 3, review the documentation provided by TRA. Number 4, prepare an assessment plan detailing what you will be required to do during the assessment. The plan will be provided to you and your employer supervisor during the scheduled date of the assessment. So these are the activities that your assessor will do during JRWA. So you will be preparing an assessment plan detailing what you will be required to do during the assessment. So it is not a surprise assessment. You will be informed ahead what the work you have done and the tools and equipment that would be available for the assessment, and also for the date and the time that is suitable for the conduct of the assessment. Now, let's talk about the process. The assessment will be conducted using a range of methods, which may include a technical interview and observation of practical skills. During the assessment, the assessor will, number one, show photographic identification to you and your employer to verify the identity, and verify your identity and your employer supervisor's identity. In accordance with the assessment plan, the assessor will require you to demonstrate an ability to perform tasks, follow directions, and plan work at the required skill level relevant to your nominated occupation. You must also demonstrate understanding of the workplace, including your role, the language used in the workplace, relevant Australian standards, legislations, and regulations, solving problems, asking directions, working well with others, and using resources effectively. Now, JRWA outcome. The JRWA report will advise if you have been assessed as job ready or not yet job ready for the nominated occupation. A successful JRWA assessment will confirm you are job ready, which means during the assessment you have demonstrated the following: well-developed job knowledge, ability to suggest and initiate improvements, reliable and responsible, and you had a well-developed ability to work to industry standards. Now, if you pass your JRWA, you can do now the last stage, or the job ready final assessment. This is the fourth and final step of the JRP. A successful JRFA outcome can be used to apply for an independent skilled migration visa. To be eligible, the applicant must have employment arrangements approved by TRA, achieved a successful JRWA outcome, provided TRA with acceptable evidence, for at least 1,725 hours of employment in the nominated occupation that demonstrates a minimum of 12 months of active employment. Take note of that, minimum of 12 months of active employment from your JRE start date, and extended periods of leave or periods of unemployment do not count towards this requirement. So, minimum of 12 months. You cannot just finish the whole process less than 12 months or less than 1 year. Now, within 45 days of receipt of your JRFA application, you will receive a letter by email confirming that you have completed all the steps for the Job Ready program and have attained a successful skills assessment in the nominated occupation. If you disagree with the outcome of your assessment, you have 90 days from the date to apply for review of your assessment outcome. Now, so I have already mentioned all the stages and the fees and what will happen every stage. The most critical is stage 3, the JRWA, where the RTO assessor will come to your workplace to set an organized time for the conduct of the assessment. If you pass, then you can proceed with stage 4. And then later on, if you pass stage 4, then you will be eligible for skilled visas 190, 189, 491 because you already have a positive skills assessment. And I think that's it. So thank you so much for watching today's information session, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
If you have a dream, chase for it. Simulan mo nang abutin. Make it happen. Come on and study in Australia with AMVPS. Let's make your future bright with AMVPS. Legal migration, education, pangarap ay maabot na. AMVPS, ang kasama mo. AMVPS, 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 AMVPS.
One of the best feelings in life is having moments with the ones you love, even if you're far away from each other. Despite being 1,000 miles apart, our feelings haven't changed. Being beside you is a wish that I've long desired. With professional help, the long wait is over. Bridge the gap with Aussie Migration and Visa Professional Solutions. You can study, work, or live in Australia. With the help of our experts, you can fix your migration and visa application efficiently. Now, love doesn't have to be distant. Call us now.